wanted to start with the bees poem. Whose pick was that? I think that was that Nicole's.
Yeah, I think that was mine.
Okay, that's one. I looked at it again today, and then I was like, wow, like I not necessarily forgot about it, but I kind of read it in a new way today when I looked at it again. So I'm glad you picked that one. So yeah, you could say a little bit about it if you want to start.
Sure, yeah. I think I was drawn to it because it starts off kind of with this like very like relatable kind of like nostalgic vibe, just like this like kind of childhood memory type situation. And then it gets like very deep by the end of it, I felt like, and you're kind of like left with a very different feeling at the end. And there's like kind of this switch like halfway through the poem, where like the bees actually come in. And like I think that the language and the imagery gets really interesting. Like I really liked the like bees polishing the air black, kind of like the horizon of pain, the like chest humming inside my shirt where your hands were careless, like those moments where I think the like way that the images are handled get very interesting. And I thought it was like the first kind of mention of them was this like you found the nest first, and like to me the use of nest instead of hive, has like this more kind of like non-threatening feel to it. And then all of a sudden they're like being attacked, so it's like I found that kind of juxtaposition really interesting. And then the way that you leave or that it gets left off, it's this like kind of idea of like survival. So there's this like level of like to me what was like empathy, kind of like with the thing that the speaker is being attacked by, and then having that like also kind of that like of you trying to love me, kind of the like trying but not doing a fantastic job. I don't know, like it was just like a very interesting kind of feel to be left with at the end of the poem, so it really kind of stayed with me afterwards. I like had to read it a couple times and think about it a little bit, um yeah.
Yeah, did anybody else have an add? But yeah, we could obviously go back, pick out some things a little more deeply, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you could go ahead. I think you were in there first.
This will be a short one, but just anytime I read a poem like this where I kind of visualize what might seem like a familiar scene or a nostalgic scene, like something from My Girl, and I'm looking for kind of cliche words, and I didn't see the word drone in the entire poem. And I sort of like, oh, I feel like somebody is in a territory or a situation thematically that could invite some cliches. And this one seemed to kind of sidestep those cliches like jujitsu. So I appreciated that very much.
Totally, I agree. I didn't really feel any cliches in the poem, and I think similar to what Nicole was saying, like it's I think you said maybe it starts off very playful, or I don't know if that was the word, but to me I completely agree. Like especially at the beginning, it's so like when I think of poems and when I read a poem, it's funny, I almost chose this one also because I thought it was so good. And I feel like my first experience with a poem, the only really way I know if like to me it's good, or like my first criteria is like whether or not it's enjoyable, like easy as that. And I think it just read so like smoothly, and like the language of it kind of carries you through right up until the end, and it's kind of just devastating at the end. It's like, I'm gonna carry you by the hand, and then I'm gonna give you a little gut punch right at the end, which is nice.
Yeah, I had just a sense in this one that it was just a perfect fit for this. Came out in the July issue, and then that's kind of the reading I had of it today, like that nostalgic summertime, childhood like scene just like hit me over the head. I'm like, I didn't like remember that the first time I read it or going through it or whatever. Um, but yeah, you said a couple of the things there I wanted to go back to. Um, but yeah, even just the first line or two lines, they're just so inviting. I just thought, I mean, maybe you mentioned it, it just kind of like invites you into the scene, and doesn't have anything that kind of knocks you out of it. So I guess that was kind of one of my questions, just on the, maybe if we think as the writer for a little bit, like how does that happen? Like how do you go into such nostalgic, like cliche territory? And you even mentioned like My Girl, like how do you not think of My Girl when you read the poem? But how does that get avoided and just kind of not get distracting, where it gets kind of syrupy or melodramatic or something distasteful like that? Did you have any thoughts on like what's it doing well?
I hesitate to use the word attack, but the scene where the bees come after the two main characters, I feel like the word attack is maybe a little too invasive, but it could have been a lot more violent, or it could have been a lot more uh, Hollywood, for lack of a better term, kind of sensationalized. And I was wondering, as soon as I got to the bee that's trying to get to the back of her mouth, like threatening the wing. I can't find the exact line, but there was something special and different happening there. And my expectations were being consistently averted, and it was like the expectations were gradually getting further and further until we get to the punchline ending, and you kind of step back and say, "Oh, it wasn't just about the bees. I see." And I felt like you said, being taken by the hand, but not down a very familiar path. Like, yes, this is the turn it takes here. Here's the twist. Here's the punchline.
Yeah, I think too, for me, it was like the kind of like, not the dancing around cliches, but like you kind of like mentioned like the sidestepping of cliches. And I think the way that the imagery is done, like even like we're, if you're talking about bees and you don't even get like the word stinging until like the very end, but it's like paired with rope, you know what I mean? So it's not even paired with like the actual bee necessarily. Um, and so I think that there are ways in like which the images are handled, like the wings reaching for my throat, it's just like ways that you don't necessarily expect, but that are also like feel very tangible, like it's like you can still feel that like as you're reading it. It's just not laid out in a way that you're used to seeing it. So that to me was like one of the biggest things. And just like those first two lines, like being drawn in and like being able to connect kind of like instantly with something, but also like have something be so relatable, but also like very specific. I just thought was really cool. So
Does anybody know the short story? It's really not that short. I think it's like 30 pages long. But it's Kurt Vonnegut, and it's called "Welcome to the Monkey House." He said, knowing he's throwing himself onto thin ice. Is that a familiar story to anybody?
I haven't read it. I wish.
Well, I can't recommend it because in retrospect, it's kind of gruesomely problematic. One of the key plot points is we're in a future dystopian society. Everybody is enforced to have no sex whatsoever because they take drugs that suppress the sex drive. And of course, there's a male main character who whisks a girl away, and he's going to have her not take the drugs and kind of bring her into the fold of the rebellion of people who are able to experience sexual feelings. And the way it is described as, then she noticed something in her nether regions, like the soft bees buzzing or the soft drone of bees buzzing. And I wondered if anyone wanted to hypothesize this poem might be a botched first attempt at intimate romance. Anybody got two fingers being pushed into something, an attempt at getting the back of the throat. I think something slides under a shirt where you had made your mistake, something along those lines. And of course, at the end, the rejection. You want to take that one on? I'm reaching a little bit, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're, well, I'm just gonna say, I think you're way off, Chris. You're way out of line here. I was afraid you were gonna go in this territory. Yeah. But yeah, I just well, yeah, and I didn't even put the use of hive to it, or the non-use of hive to it. But yeah, in the fifth stanza, you found the nest first. It just kind of makes you stop for a second, because it's even before we get to the bees, other than the title. But then I found myself in is it the sixth stanza or fifth stanza, when the bees finally come. I was like, oh yeah, it's about bees, right? You kind of get reminded halfway through. But yeah, there's this other. That's what's so kind of nice about it. It's surprised, like it surprised me, even though you know where it's going from there's this kind of little like, youthful romance happening, but it was still like a little surprising. So that was nice.
For me, yeah, if I found the line, chest humming inside my shirt where your hands were careless. I'm like, all right, now I can't ignore it anymore.
I think also it's like not too problematic to read into it. Like because it is obviously a romantic interaction, and like sorry, my dog might be in the background running around. Like the first instance of bees also isn't violent at all. It's almost like gentle. If I may, I'll just like read over it really quickly. You found the nest first, small but wide enough to push fingers into. I shook as the first one landed on my tongue. Wings reaching for my throat, bees polishing the air black, a blazing happiness. And then it goes into the pain. But really, it seems almost a bit gentle, even though it's an intrusive situation. So I don't know if that's way off base. And I think also poetry evokes a lot of things to different people. So maybe the writer didn't mean for that to be the case, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad reading on it, I would say.
That was part of my initial hesitancy in describing the bee situation as an attack, because I felt like the author was deliberately, there's an evil twin version of this poem where the bees are angry and a force of nature and something to be feared, and they're intrusive and invasive. And it seems like this person deliberately didn't go that route, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And then it does end with, like the end of you trying to love me. So there are kind of like subtle hints of this kind of throughout, and it kind of almost starts off in that kind of like romantic type, childhood crush type situation. So but I think that the way that it does kind of just like very gently carry you through the poem until the end, and then you're like, whoa. So yeah.
So now that we got our first poem out of the way, Nicole, if you wouldn't mind doing a quick intro. Who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? Anything you want to share about yourself?
Sure. I'm Nicole. So I'm a ceramic artist slash poet at the moment. So I just am like fully a working artist, and I also write. And actually, my first poem to get published ever was in Wild Roof Journal. So that was really exciting. But yeah, so that was awesome. It was in the May issue. I've just sort of kind of started diving into that whole, like the world of publication and everything. So yeah, and then when it was mentioned that, the podcast and the roundtable, I was like, that sounds fun, and like an interesting thing to jump into. So
yeah, I think I mean, if anybody's out there is in the market for like a coffee mug or other kind of like drinking vessel, I think some of the ones that I've seen are pretty remarkable.
thank
Not
you.
even to say anything about your poem that included those mugs. But yeah, those are legit mugs.
Thank you.
Because they even, I think that's what reminded me. They even like there was some that had like a mountain etching on them, and then like the kind of the wild roof imagery as like mountains. So But yeah, and in the website, when this is posted, it'll have your information as
Oh,
well,
perfect.
so people will be able to check it out now that I
Awesome.
gave him my my recommendation.
Oh, such a glowing
Yeah.
review. That's so nice.